I want to create in this film a sort of experience that I want for myself in the cinema, which is to be able to go right into the story and to lose myself for, you know, the 2 hours that you're sitting there with, and to feel like I've actually been on a journey, and that the journey is something that I've felt emotionally and atmospherically, and that I'll be able to remember, and that there's also opportunity to have learned something from it. I don't know if I've done that, but it would be great if I had.
I think the most challenging thing about producing the film was to be able to truly retain Jane's vision. I mean, she's a special filmmaker. She has an absolutely idiosyncratic way of telling a story, and it was essential that she be given the conditions, the support, the people around her who would enable her to do that.
I wanted to create a woman's character that was utterly mysterious to me. I'm very attracted to people that create an air of mystique about themselves and sort of impenetrable, and you can't understand their behaviour, and very willful, and don't seem to care about other people's opinions. I find these characters immensely attractive.
One of the ways into Ada that I chose early on was putting on the corset and having it laced up nice and tight, and putting on the hoop skirt, and the complexity of the costume. I wanted to see where that would take me, and I thought that was a very useful external tool, was just to kind of give in to the costumes and the challenge of walking and finding how a 19th century woman in general would move, and how Ada in particular might move with those constrictions.
What I love about the way that Holly plays Ada is that you have a sense that she's almost childlike in her relationship to her feelings, that they're very pure, they're very real for her, and they are covered up by a kind of caution in this new world. As the love scenes continue, we get to know what she's really feeling. She uncovers the things that are hiding her true emotions.
I did fall in love really deeply with a few of the pieces that I play in the movie, which made it all the easier to emotionally commit to, you know, how Ada played the piano. The piano was quite interesting to see how it would progress with me personally, you know, that I'd be able to overcome the challenge of playing in front of people. And, I mean, God, you know, that was really not as difficult as I imagined it would be. I mean, you're with this crew day in and day out, and I could bang on the piano while they're setting up, and I got used to it all on my own. And it was a great group of people. They would never judge me on how well or poorly I played the piano, so I felt very safe.
The piano has come to mean so many different things now. I mean, the piano is Ada, for one thing, and the fact that Ada didn't speak, which was a decision that I made because I wanted the piano to be so much more passionately important to her. And so the piano also became her voice. It also, in some way, I think, can be seen as a metaphor for civilization, in the sense that the piano is a very intricate instrument. And at the same time, what's curious about it is that its language is very universal, and it speaks to the emotions.
Ada has a specific challenge just technically in that the sign language and the piano playing were two things that I had to look like I'd been doing all of my life. The sign language, which was utterly new to me, I developed with a sign language teacher based on the Scottish alphabet, and then from there we branched off and made up all of our own signs that would be particular only to Ada and Flora, which would be known as kind of a home sign language rather than Scottish Sign Language.
When I was thinking about the character Flora, who's Ada's daughter, I felt that it would be really lovely to have like a miniature Ada, and to have this kind of conspiracy of femininity between the two of them. And so I was looking for a little girl who looked or could look like Holly, and also just had a sort of great spirit to her, and I didn't know what I was going to really find.
This film explores the both the desperate and the wonderful things that happen between men and women in a way that's not often done in films. And these things make for moments of sublime ecstasy and moments of the most terrible fear and terror.
Sam's character, Stuart, could be very conventionally seen as a villain, and I wanted somebody who had a lot of charm and attractiveness about him. And I don't like that sort of very obvious idea of villain at all. It's boring to me. I feel we've all got abilities to be quite cruel in our lives and also to be kind. And I think Stuart's main problem is his ignorance and his pomposity.
It occurred to me that Stuart was someone who has a kind of exterior that's like a shell of self-delusion, a shell that is shattered by the experience of living with this woman who explodes every kind of conception that he's had about himself and about his place and his future and his present and his universe in general.
With Harvey, who plays Baines, who is the kind of the lover character, I wanted to have almost a sort of beast, you know, man-beast. I was also really impressed by the way that he kind of owned Baines, that he really felt he understood the experience that Baines was going to be going through. And I really wanted the actors to claim their characters in that sense, because I felt the characters were so complex that they had to really decide that they knew who these people were and want to live through them for that time.
There are dangers that these people have to confront in order to understand their identity. Confrontation, they go through conflict, they go through suffering that they go through in order to have revelation, in order to learn something. They have the courage to confront what they need, because fear is involved in confronting yourself. And without the ability to suffer, to face up to fear, to face up to anguish, there is no evolving to another place. These characters do that. They descend into a place of hardship and come out in a very loving place. But without that risk, without that suffering, they would not have arrived at this oneness that they share. Love, family.
It suddenly occurred to me that there was an innocence about sex, eroticism and love that it's very difficult for people in this modern age to achieve. We grow up with this, most of us, you know, particularly women, I think men too, with the idea that, you know, one of the great achievements of life is a really full-fledged sexual love affair and relationship. And we read endless magazines about it and books which help inform us, you know, on proper lovemaking. And so something of the innocence of the romantic or erotic impulse has lost. It's hard for us to just fall upon it, for it to be discovered. And the characters in the story are rather blind to what's happened to them, so that they do actually fall across it. Really, the other way I understand myself as a director for actors is changing all the time. And working with those three, I felt that the best thing I could do for them was to create a situation where they could do their best work. And in order to do that, it was to intelligently discuss what they were going to do, to give them an immense amount of freedom, and to create a really substantial trust relationship with them.
I see her as being one of those incredibly enthusiastic people that are in your corner when you're boxing. You know, the people that are flapping the towel at you and, you know, sponging you down and shoving you out to take more of a beating and cheering all the time, wildly cheering.
The physical problems of shooting in some of these locations, which were chosen for their atmosphere and for their bigness, vastness, difficulty, charm, was enormous, and it was frightening to start with because you could see that things could go incredibly wrong.
I was very interested in the first meeting about locations that Jane had with our location finder. They both started talking about the trees in this extraordinary way. I mean, I thought bush was bush, but suddenly it took on a quality of a kind of mythologized quality, that there were so many different kinds of landscape in New Zealand. And I came to know that and to love that.
The bush is very secretive and very moody and one time protective and the other time frightening, and I felt that was a great landscape to play with.
And Jane is someone who really does push you in terms of keeping that image of what you originally wanted to do very focused in your mind, really not compromising, really going for it, and yet with a very realistic sense of, you know, what filmmaking's about.
When I came here, I just went, oh my God, I mean, look at it. One of the big challenges was to really see the scale, because you know, on a camera it's really different. And I mean, I really scoured all those, you know, Lawrence of Arabia type movies, to try and work out how they'd done it.
And how had that?
It was always like contrast, you know, a tiny person in a landscape. I mean, without a person there, there's no sort of context. You know, like you, I was in love with Emily Bronte's work and the wildness, the savageness of her spirit, and somehow that wildness of Emily Bronte was such a great tonic against the sort of be a nice girl, well-behaved person thing that, you know, we were constantly fed at school. And, you know, some people like Emily Bronte saved my life. And the atmosphere of her storytelling and the moors that she set it in.
That was very much a moulding of the location and the character as happened in the piano.
Yeah, I felt that, we've got a landscape as atmospheric as that. A landscape that I loved from the bottom of my heart, and I really wanted to share that landscape in the story.
There's that shot of you talking to little Anna.
Anna's hands were so cold that if you look closely at the picture, there's a hot water bottle.
Yeah,
and we were just trying to warm her hands up so she could continue. Anna was such a unusual child. I remember when her mum left the first time, you know, and left her in rehearsal.
It was hard.
Yeah, it was
But her
hard,
father
and she had
stayed.
to cry, and, you know, but she also really loved the work.
Yeah.
Yeah. And she was so brave, and she just loved
She really was brave.
Holly so much. I mean, they really, really bonded.
Thank goodness.
And I remember Holly saying, you know, look, I'm not really naturally a kid type person. You know, I'm really scared that I'm not going to get on with Flora character, and that would be really scary. But actually, they were a total team.
Yeah, right from the very first time
right
they met.
from the beginning. And everything Holly did, Anna wanted to do too.
Which is what you wanted. You wanted that
yeah.
sort of twin-like quality to them.
Yeah. I just loved how much the actors gave to it all. And, I mean, not one more than other, but Holly, her embodiment of this creature, and she was really a creature, she made this woman so fascinating and impossible to predict. Her passion about her piano, her disregard for the man in a way. Women empowerment has always been, trying to predict what the man will do next, you know?
I just remember that she was driven by this very strong will, and that I know where that idea came from. You know, we knew people who were kind of willful and very much themselves.
Yeah, in fact, you know, Janet Patterson,
That's right.
our costume designer, she was my model for Ada.
I know.
The most beautiful looking woman I've ever seen, and that's one of the reasons why I wanted originally Ada to be really tall,
Yeah.
because Janet's tall.
Yeah, but
Oh my God, I loved how little she was, you know?
that was an incredible
And when in
accident
that
of
sex
fate.
scene, you know, Harvey just sort of grabbed her and dragged her whole body over. It was like, whoa. Harvey was so monumental. Remember when we met him?
Yes.
I remember him saying to us, like with tears in his eyes, you know, I want to do it, but do you want me?
Yes.
And we were like, you know, we weren't used to this level of emotion. We were like, oh, what? And we had to sort of think, like, we can't say you've got the job because we've got 2 more actors to see in New York, you know. You know, what convinced me was when I called that other actor Harvey by mistake. I thought, oh my God, I think a decision's been made, yeah.
I was completely intrigued by your imagination. And we liked a lot of the same kind of ideas and found the same sort of things funny and intriguing and
It was an amazing adventure, really.
yeah, suddenly there was no question. We were just going to do this together.
And I think, too, that the production had to be at a certain scale for it to really succeed, and we both instinctively understood that it should not be kept to be, like a tiny, small budget film, but we should take it to its highest point, and that we should get the best actors we could in the world, that would bring perhaps attention and audience, and that I would be really stepping up as well to work with actors who were like so much more experienced than me, which is something I hadn't done at that point.
And I would be stepping up to find the finance to do it. I mean, it's like it is hard to keep having that belief in those days of trying to finance the film, in the days when we went around America meeting people we didn't know and not really understanding exactly what putting a production together in that world was like.
Where we became extraordinarily lucky was in being financed by Bouygues. He was famous for being a millionaire concrete maker. And late in his life, he went to see Bertolucci's film, The Last Emperor.
Yeah.
And he fell in love with it and thought, this is what I want to use my money for, to help people make their films. I mean, and I guess, I understand it, because that was the reason why I started making films in the first place too. Because you saw something that someone made that moved you so much that you felt, oh, God, they've explained something about life to you that was really crucial and gorgeous.
He had people who advised him and scouted the world, and they worked with Almodovar and David Lynch. And then they came to see us. Pierre Rission, who was working for him, came and said, I think this Monsieur Bouygues will give you all the money. And it just seemed so really unlikely, didn't it?
Yeah.
Well, it did to me. I thought,
I don't think they had read the scripts.
Really?
Because
Yeah.
Pierre said that he had explained the script and read the important parts.
Yeah.
And that they liked it already. And the Frenchman who was fronting the company for Bouygues was just saying, yes, we want to do it. Like that. Just, we'll do it.
I think success is when you can see that something's touched people's hearts. But even before that, with this film, when we got to the end of the edit, I do believe that we felt like we had made the film we wanted to make.
Yeah. I mean, I remember screening it for people before we went to Cannes, and people would say, look, it's a really good film, but, people won't like it. A lot of people will find this too much, or it's too extreme, and I remember thinking, oh yeah, okay, I guess. I mean, I'm pretty used to that. So, however, I remember when we went actually to Cannes.
That first screening was incredibly exciting. I mean, the long standing ovation and the feeling that everyone really was enraptured by it. It was amazing.
My mum spent a bit of time in mental hospital, and one time she told me about a woman she met who chopped her own finger off, her wedding ring finger, because when she found out her husband was having an affair. And then I went to a dance that they were having in the mental hospital, and there was the woman with her husband, like that passion and fury and anger that had created this moment of, no return, all gone, and
They were still together.
they were dancing together.
My goodness.
That was a sort of, like, in reality, something that made me feel like, oh yes, that's not too absurd, to do that thing. Because I always like to feel like, oh, it's happened before. So I know something where it happened.
Do you think that memory?
Yeah, definitely.
Inspired you,
It definitely inspired me to tell that story, because I can remember, thinking and asking my mum about it, who had heard the story in quite some detail. That people, when they're, I guess, sexualized and jealous and angry, do extraordinary things, One of the challenges of this project was that the music had to be extremely specific, and we had to have it before we started shooting. We thought about people, and we both really loved Michael Nyman's work with Greenaway.
You thought that he might give it a kind of contemporary feeling to classical music in a way, a different, original take on it.
It was amazing meeting him because he's so hilarious.
He's
And I was
very relaxed.
so nervous ringing him up and saying, "Oh, hello, Michael. Would you, love to talk to you about our story?" And he went, "I love Australia. I love Neighbours, and I love cricket." And he did actually come out and spent time with me. And we'd say, "Well, what do you need, Michael?" And he said, "Oh, I guess I need a piano." And it was very blithe. And we hired a room at NIDA and had a piano put in it.
A beautiful
And so,
piano.
very first meeting, I took Michael to the room and he looked at the piano a bit, sat down, plinked a little bit, and he said, "Let's go shopping." At the very end, I said, "Well, have you got any ideas about how the music might be?" He said, "Yes, I'm going to do some research of Scottish tunes, and I'll come back to you." And it was such an act of faith the whole time. It was just all faith, all faith.
He also worked out that Holly was really good at emotional, powerful pieces rather than delicate, intricate things, and so I think that affected the way he composed.
He proceeded, yeah.
Yeah.
And I think with music, it's very difficult because, they do, come in drafts as well, and you have to feel that there's an essence or an excitement somewhere in the piece that they send.
Like the Greenaway music, but we didn't want it to actually be like
Yeah,
that.
that was hilarious. Really love your music, but do we have to have the da-da-da-da-da? You mean, he said, you want my music without sounding like me?
Yeah.
I said, yes, that's right. I want your music sounding different.
And then you really wanted to have an upright piano. That was in your vision, but Andrew McAlpine found the one we eventually
Well, apparently,
chose.
actually, in that period, those table-type pianos were much more prevalent. So in the end, he convinced me I'd be able to get many more shots and work with it better. So
He convinced you.
yeah, he convinced me. He was brilliant in so many ways. He thought ahead to all the issues that I guess designers think about, but with a great deal of confidence and support for us. I mean, I feel like very often you see the very best of people in making these projects because they do, put themselves second to whatever they can do and bring out of themselves to make the project as good as possible. You just see people working with, just extraordinary degrees of commitment.
That's right. And it did feel as
I mean,
though...
even us.
It did feel as though the piano drew those people. I mean, Janet Patterson, our good friend, who'd we made television with, the costume designer. And
I know we keep talking about Jen, how much we love her, but she really was a muse for me, and I think for you too. She just was so strong and so delicate in her vision. She was really an Ada.
Well, I mean, Ada protected her own, vision of the world and her own dreams for herself by not talking about them to anyone and just closing down the ranks.
With her daughter.
With her daughter, yeah.
I guess at the time, I didn't think it was anything surprising because, as a woman, you live in your own life and you have your desire and it's maybe private or personal, but that's what you live out of.
That's right. Yeah.
So it's normal to you, but you're not seeing it in the world.
I guess that's why so many women would come up to us when the film was released and go, "Oh, that film, it's just really touched me. It's just given,
given
voice to my expression." Yeah.
I know, ludicrously enough, that she's, ironically enough, since Ada doesn't speak at all.
No.
But, it made me feel quite excited and proud that film does give that female desire, female intimacy, sexuality, such a life.